Hello, thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking through all things car salary sacrifice scheme, how it works for an employee, how it works for an employer. So if you've got loads of questions about how the salary sacrifice scheme works, you're in the right place because we are going to answer those questions for you. Just to introduce ourselves, we are from a company called Vehicle Consulting. We set up salary sacrifice schemes within businesses so your employees can access cars through their salary and it saves a load of tax. That's basically how it works. Just to introduce myself, my name's Tom. I am the head of marketing at Vehicle Consulting. You might have seen some of our videos. This is Mike, who is also in our videos. Mike, would you just like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, not a problem at all. I'm Mike Cottrell. I'm the Salary Sacrifice Solutions Leader at Vehicle Consulting, so I am all things salary sacrifice, as you like to say.
Yes, exactly. That's your strap line, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to be interviewing Mike. I've got a load of questions lined up. We are live on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, on this camera, TikTok over here. So if you have any questions, comment them. They will come up on our screen and we will answer them for you. Right, so first of all, Mike, let's just kick things off with an explanation for people who don't actually know what salary sacrifice is. Like, what is salary sacrifice scheme?
Yeah, no problem. It's probably the best question to ask, really. Salary sacrifice is an employer benefit which is offered out to employees. Works very similar to cycle to work schemes, salary sacrifice, pension contributions, where an employee will forego a gross element of their salary.
Yep.
Through doing that, they're saving on income tax and national insurance. And through doing this, they get the perk of an electric vehicle most of the time, which obviously saves massive money on getting into an electric vehicle.
So you're getting a car, paying through your salary with your pre-tax earnings. That's the key part,
Absolutely,
isn't it?
yeah, that's the pre-tax. So it's done as your gross deduction. So the deduction that's made to your salary is done before income tax, national insurance is taken, which is where all the savings come from.
No worries. And I mean, so, okay, because that's what people get confused about when they're asking questions on our videos. They say, so what's the difference between just leasing it personally? Where does the saving, how is there that saving? Because the saving could be quite big, can't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Essentially, the way to look at it is you're using your gross salary to source a vehicle rather than taking your normal salary, you're getting the income tax, national insurance tax on it, and then using your net salary to go to a dealership and pay for a vehicle with your net wage. Obviously, using the total amount of your gross wage is where all the saving is coming from.
So would you say that getting a car on salary sacrifice is going to be cheaper than getting a car or leasing one personally?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at an electric or plug-in hybrid vehicle, it's definitely going to be cheaper than doing it personally.
And how does it compare to, we've done a few videos showing how it compares to used cars. Can it be cheaper to get a new car on salary sacrifice than getting I don't know, a 2 or 3 year old car?
No, it's a valid question because that's where people obviously compare it to personal vehicles. Personal contract purchase tends to be the most common way to buy a car personally. And like you say, obviously on our past videos, we've done some working examples of it. And just to show people think it's cheaper to go out and buy a 2, 3 year old used car. But actually, when you're using it, no one tends to buy these vehicles at the end of the contract. So if you're doing it just from a strictly leasing point of view, it works out massively cheaper. And you're getting a brand new car, it's fully maintained, potentially insured as well, and it just makes massive sense.
Okay, so if you're thinking about getting a new or nearly new car, consider looking at salary sacrifice because it could potentially be cheaper than getting a used car and maybe probably cheaper than getting a new car as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Right, so that gives you a bit of an understanding of why employees want it. But as a kind of package, you offer it as a perk, don't you? It's a business offers it to their employees as a perk, don't they?
Yeah. Like you say, from an employee point of view, there's numerous reasons why this benefits the employee, but it also benefits the employer as well. There's loads of different reasons as where this can link in. One, the company will be saving on NI. So every person that opts into this, it is a gross deduction to their salary. So an employer is paying less in national insurance on their salary. So one, there could be a saving benefit there. Probably the most common reason why people actually implement salary sacrifice schemes is staff attrition. You want to keep your employees where they are, offer benefits to keep and retain there, and also it can be used as a recruitment tool. It's probably the most commonly requested perk at the moment. And like I say, it could be the difference between an employee choosing your business over someone else. And then there's other reasons that it might link in as well. Obviously, everyone that opts into this, you can use it to offset your carbon footprint as a business, which I'm sure we'll touch upon later. But there's a numerous load of benefits as why salary sacrifice can benefit the employer just as much as you're benefiting your employees.
Okay, so a business will want it because, keep staff at your company because they're happy and they've got more money, essentially.
Absolutely.
And maybe a nicer car. You got a nice new car the other day.
I did, yes, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Through salary sacrifice?
It was through salary
Good
sacrifice.
choice. And okay, so it saves the money, keeps your staff happy. They're going to stay at your business, better for attracting staff at your business for that exact same reason. Also reduces CO2 as well. So if you are a business that has high CO2 levels and you need to get it down, this is one of the reasons, another reason you can get it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's probably worth it quickly expanding on that. So with obviously CO2 reductions, everyone that opts into it, any business that's done through a salary sacrifice vehicle, whether that's commuting to work or business, you can use that CO2 to offset other outputs of your business. So you might have a large van fleet which might not be able to go full electric yet. You can use this salary sacrifice fleet to offset the carbon footprint. You might be in an industry like a chemical plant where you produce and your natural output from a company as a high CO2 output. You can use this to offset that part.
Okay, we've just got a question from Big John. How can I get advice from you guys and speak? Anyone who wants to book a call with us, you can click the link in our bio and book a call. If it's a large company, it tends to be Mike that deals with those. If it's small and medium-sized companies, it will be our colleague Daniel, who's in quite a lot of videos. Click the link in bio, book a call, and you can have a chat with us, and we'll talk you through how to set it up. What do you mean by offsetting the carbon footprint? Just explain, sorry, how that actually works.
Yeah, no problem at all. So obviously, if you're taking your employees from petrol or diesel vehicles and then putting them, in the eyes of HMRC, this vehicle is leased under the company. So it's a company vehicle. So if you're taking your employees' vehicles, which are using their personal vehicles, which are petrol, diesel engines for business purposes, does include commuting, you can use that now reduction from going to a CO2 output from the petrol engine to now a CO2 output from electric, which is zero. And you can use that carbon footprint to offset other areas of the business. Now, if you do ESG reports or SECR reports, it would come under scope 2 of the emissions, if that does resonate with anyone who's listening in.
Well, it tends to be bigger companies that are interested in that, isn't it? But I mean, we've actually got one client who recently launched, and they got salary sacrifice, and their primary reason was the CO2 reduction, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's really common now. Like I say, a lot of companies are trying to go net neutral. And like you say, cars are a big aspect of it in certainly a lot of industries, and this is just a way to use that to offset your company to get net neutral.
Have I asked you about the ESG reporting?
Have you asked me about the ESG reporting?
I don't think I have
No,
I?
no,
Let's go into it. So how does it affect big companies that want to improve their ESG rating? How does it improve that?
Yeah, so ESG is sort of the buzzword at the minute. It's a real big thing, which is about it. And basically, it's just an insight into your company. And it gives a really good idea if you're looking for investment, if you're a large company looking for investment into it. Now, ESG links into a lot of different parts. Obviously, ESG is split between environmental, social, and governance. Obviously, the environmental aspects we've touched upon. Obviously, offsetting carbon footprint, reducing it. The social aspect, you're improving your EVP employee opinion surveys, you're improving your employees' benefits, and that's where it links into the social element. There is a little bit in the government side of it, maybe in cost saving, but not too much. It more links into the environmental and social side of ESG reporting.
Okay, but if you're a managing director watching this, the reason you want to, you can improve your ESG rating, which is going to help potentially improve your share value if it's a large business, or if you're looking for investment. It can help with that, can't it?
It links with a lot of things. Obviously, if you're looking from it from a large point of view, potentially company investment, they want to have an insight into your company, and it's a really good insight. But alternatively, people like ourselves, we're not big enough where we're not mandatory required to do ESG reporting, but we are doing it ourselves. And the reason being is when employees are looking to obviously join your company, having a look at your ESG report is a real good indicator of how you're going as an employer and what you're planning to do, and that could be the difference between an employee then joining your company.
Okay, yeah. So if you are the decision maker with salary sacrifice in your company, or if you're trying to persuade your boss to get salary sacrifice, point out to them that it is beneficial for the company because, as we said, it improves staff retention and attracting staff to your business, saves your staff money, so it's going to keep them higher, potentially higher productivity, who knows, and also reduces CO2, which can be used for their ESG reporting. So those are the key things that I would say if I was trying to convince my boss. Okay, that's kind of why your business would want to go for it. I'm going to ask you a load of questions about how, the nuts and bolts of how it works, common questions that we get asked all the time. I'm also going to go over, just so you all know, I'm going to go over what can go wrong, worries that people have about it, how you choose a provider, and how it actually works for a business. Anyway, let's kick off with the questions about the nuts and bolts. I've got some quick fire questions for you. Mike, what kind of cars does it work for?
So it works predominantly best for full electric vehicles, and the reason it works best for full electric is obviously these cars on the HMRC are classed as still as company cars, so they attract a benefit in kind. Now, benefit in kind for electric vehicles at the minute is fixed at 2%.
Yep.
It's that at the moment and for the next financial year, which is obviously we're moving over to in a week's time. and then every year after it's raising up 1% until 2028 where it reaches 5%. But petrol and diesels are also moving up in line with that as well. Now, the reason it works so well is you're saving all this money on income tax, national insurance, and you're only paying such a small proportion back in benefit in kind tax.
Okay.
Now, it still does work with plug-in hybrids. Obviously, plug-in hybrids have a benefit in kind that the lowest at the minute is 5%, but it can go all the way up to 18%. Now, it's still going to be cheaper with the income tax saving. You just basically, all the money you're saving in income tax, you're just paying a slightly larger proportion back in benefit in kind. So it still does benefit, even doing it personally, but not as much as full electric. Petrol and diesels, like you say, the benefit in kind on them now is going astronomically high. I just don't think it merits doing.
Okay.
We can, in theory, do it, but I just don't think it's worth doing.
Okay, so works best on electric cars, works okay on plug-in hybrids.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, the reason you see a lot of our competitors, it tends to revolve around EV in the name because it resonates best, and that's where the most savings are. And from an employer's point of view, the more people that are in full electric, you're offsetting a load more carbon footprint than plug-in hybrid, which still does have a carbon outlay.
Okay, do all salary sacrifice scheme companies allow their employees to get plug-in hybrids?
No, not all of them do. Some of them are strictly restricted to electric vehicles.
Do vehicle consulting?
We do offer both,
Oh,
yes.
what a coincidence.
What coincidence that is.
It's as if we planned that, Mike. Okay, how do you actually order the car?
So there's two ways to do it, obviously. Different employers have different ways to do it. Obviously, we have two different ways. For large companies, we offer a portal, a dedicated portal where your employees register on, log onto there, and every vehicle which if it's a UK source vehicle and it's electric or plug-in hybrid, we can quote it. But you might want certain vehicles only showing on there. We build the portal to what you want. Employees log into the portal. It's real time, all the offers, and you can order it through there.
Yep.
For smaller companies which might not need the necessity of a portal, we do sort of a one-to-one consultative approach. So myself, potentially Daniel, would give you a call up, go through salary sacrifice, explain it to your employees, go through it, and then do individual quotes based upon what they require.
Yeah, that works quite well for, say, directors are looking just for themselves, for example. It's nice to have someone to talk you through who knows about salary sacrifice, knows about cars, can guide you through deals and what's going on at the moment, isn't it?
Like I say, for some people the system works really well, but there is niche examples, like you say, for directors, if they fall between £100,000 and £125,000, for example, if you're lucky enough to fall in that area, if you're sacrificing a gross amount on there, every £2 you're sacrificing, you're actually getting £1 back on your tax code. So there is benefits where this can massively benefit you, which obviously our system might not potentially show, but we would notice it and have a one-to-one consultation explaining that.
Gotcha. Okay. Are the prices of the cars on salary sacrifice the same no matter which salary sacrifice company sets up your scheme in your business?
No, they don't. So we are a broker. We sit up on a panel of funders and we go out to market and get you the best pricing from each vehicle. So for example, if you wanted a Tesla Model Y, we've got a panel of funders which we'd approach and we'd take the best pricing from them. Now, other suppliers might just either write their own books themselves or only use one finance broker. So what you'll notice is the pricing can be quite significantly different, which I'm sure we've showed some examples of in the past. It can be significantly different between each supplier you choose.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I've been making quite a lot of videos about this week. Basically, it makes complete sense that if you want a competitive price car, you need competition in the salary sacrifice scheme. You have that with a salary sacrifice provider who has multiple financiers and access to all of the car dealerships throughout the UK. There's just loads of competition there. So that's how you get competitive prices, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I mean, you want to partner with someone who operates the best and, like I say, gives good advice. But what you also want is someone that's going to market for you as well and looking for the best prices. And that's just not on the vehicle aspect. That could be on the insurance aspect, as we'll touch upon later. The early termination aspect. We want to give employers as much choice as possible to make sure the scheme fits them best.
Okay, so in short, if you want the best price, look for one that's got multiple finance suppliers and not just one finance supplier.
Yes.
Okay, whose name is the car lease in? Is it in the employee's name or the business's name?
So the vehicle is leased under the business name with the finance company being the owner of the vehicle.
Okay, and what about the insurance? Is that in the business's name or the employee?
It is, no, the business name is
Okay.
on the insurance.
Okay, so there is the big worry that businesses always have, which is, oh, it's in the business's name. What happens if the employee leaves?
Yeah.
Let's just go into that now, because that's the biggest worry.
It's the question which everyone asks. Like say, no employer wants to set out this scheme. It sounds great, sounds too good to be true. 20 people order cars and then 20 people leave the company. What do I do now? I don't need these cars. And the answer to it is early termination protection. And essentially what it is, it's a bolt-on to the scheme, which is a cost borne by the employee. If you do a portal, it's already built in there upon agreed. And basically what it does, it covers you in the eventuality where if an employee decides to leave the business, goes on things like maternity, paternity, dismissal, long-term sickness, loss of driver's license due to medical grounds, essentially covers you for all the unforeseen eventualities. You just hand the vehicle back and there's no cost to return the vehicle, as would if you've got like a normal business contract hire. Usually it's like 50% of the remaining rentals. This way you can just hand the vehicle back with no cost to you as an employer.
Okay, I would say that this is probably the most important thing you want to look at when setting up the scheme, would you?
Absolutely, from an employer's point of view, yes.
And you said, so are there multiple different packages that we offer in terms of early termination protection?
Yeah. So we've got multiple different packages because obviously we appreciate potentially 5,000 employee companies might not have the same requirements as a company which offers 5 employees vehicles. So we have obviously gone out to market, got a number of different packages which suit different employers better than others.
Okay, and how does that compare to other salary sacrifice providers?
Well, to be honest, most of them, I've yet to see a few that offer more than one package, but most of them this is a bolt-on package. Do you want it? You either have it or you don't have it. And this is the price.
And who pays for that? I guess there's a cost to it. Who pays for it?
Yes, so the early termination protection is a bolt-on thing to the scheme. It's a cost borne by the employee, but it's worth noting that this is a gross deduction, so you can still save an income tax and national insurance. It gets bolted into the payment. And like you say, in most cases, employees actually want this protection. It's an employer protection, but it's also an employee protection because employees also don't want to feel like if I take this car, although it is a really good retention tool, they don't want to feel fixed that if anything does happen or anything unforeseen happens, they're going to have a large payment to make, so they're just as happy to have this protection as the employer. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. We had someone comment on one of our videos today saying that exact thing, that their company has just rolled out a salary sacrifice scheme, but there was a term in it. They didn't have early termination protection, and they had a term or condition that says if you leave the business, the employee has to continue paying the lease.
Yeah.
That's completely pointless because it ruins the perk, and no one's gonna go for that.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure how you'd manage to enforce that, if I'm being honest. But that's a different topic.
Okay, well, but essentially, the long and short of it is early termination protection is something you want to consider from both the employer and employee.
This isn't an employer benefit or an employer. This is something which benefits everyone, and I think should be added to a scheme of a company of a certain size.
Okay, perfect. Right, next question. Does it affect your credit rating as an employee if you get a car through the scheme?
No, so because the vehicle is leased under the business name, there's no credit searches on the employee. The only thing where it could potentially affect someone's credit is obviously you are foregoing a gross element of your salary, so on paper you do earn less. However, we've spoke with numerous banks. A lot of our finance companies are actually banks themselves, and a letter usually from your employer to confirm that this is your actual wage, but you are deducting this amount as a salary sacrifice, and then they'll take what they call as the nominal amount, which is the wage before deductions.
Okay. Is it only for high earners?
No, not at all. I mean, high earners tend to opt into it. Whenever we launch a scheme, high earners tend to opt into it straight away. Now, the reason being is therefore going a gross element of their salary, which usually falls under 45% tax bracket, so they're saving more. But ultimately, even on the lowest end of the scale, you're still saving 20%. You're basically offsetting 20% income tax, so it benefits everyone in the scheme.
Right, I get you. So the higher taxpayers do get the most benefit because they're reducing that amount of 40 or 45% taxed salary.
Ultimately, you're giving up a proportion of your salary which attracts that amount, so there is more savings to it there, but it does benefit everyone.
So these adverts that you see where it says you can save up to 40%, is that because you're getting rid of that amount of salary that gets taxed at 40%?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where the saving comes from.
Okay, we've got a person who's commented saying, I'm starting building a business all over my phone right now. Salary sacrifice is everywhere right now. Why is that?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's salary sacrifice in itself. It's not this new thing that's been around it's just arrived in the last year. It's been around for quite a while. I think the NHS did it a good few years ago. Obviously, different names. I think it was salary exchange for the NHS, if I believe correctly. The reason it's become so big now is obviously benefiting kind tax is going massively up. I mean, cost of living is having a big impact on it. People are more cautious about the wage, and it's finding out what's the best route to get into a new vehicle and cost me less. And because benefiting kind is still so low on electric vehicles, at the moment, this just makes the most financial sense. And that's why, and obviously, people are noticing that. People like ourselves have noticed that, and that's why you've seen a boom in salary sacrifice. Okay,
next question. We get asked 1 billion times on the comments in our videos. What about all the depreciation that comes with an electric car?
I mean, it's a valid point. I mean, I'm sure you see in the news, people aren't buying second-hand electric vehicles at present. This vehicle is a lease agreement, so at the end of the contract, you're not required to sell it. There's no ownership of the vehicle. It's the finance company who sources the vehicle's problem. It's not yours. So at the end of the contract, you hand the vehicle back. You don't worry about what it's getting sold for second hand. All you worry about is the fixed monthly payments throughout the course of the contract. So there's no need to worry about depreciation of your vehicle because it's not your.
You don't have to sell it.
It's not your worry.
Okay, perfect. Does salary sacrifice affect your pension?
Yes, it can do, is the quick answer. Obviously, you are foregoing a gross sum of your salary. On paper, you're earning less, which means that does have an effect of what your pension contributions are. However, whenever we set this up with employers, most employers use potentially NI savings or just top the pension up to what they call as the nominal amount before deductions, so it doesn't affect your pension. But if it is something which you're looking to opt into and your employer does offer it, make sure you check with your employer before going ahead, because the answer is it could potentially affect your pension.
That is what I say when people say it affects your pension in the comments in our videos, but people will often snap back by saying no business is going to top up your pension. Do they?
I think virtually all of the ones that we've done tend to do that.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, obviously it doesn't apply for every business, but
No.
worth checking. Though,
It is worth checking. Like you say, usually your employers are saving on NI to do this as well. So employers do tend to pass part of that back to top up the NI. The NI that they're saving doesn't offset the actual money that they could pay back for the pension. But in answer to your question, the majority of people that we set up tend to do it off the nominal amount.
Okay. Do you have to pay company car tax on this?
Yes, you do, which is what we've alluded to in the video, benefit in kind tax.
Yep.
At the moment, in regards to HMRC, it's still classed as a company car because it's a contract between the finance company and a business, and it's leased under the business name. It does attract benefit in kind tax, but as mentioned, the income tax, national insurance that you're saving massively offsets what you're paying back in benefit in kind tax.
Get a few comments related to this, which are kind of weird. Like, for example, does that mean that you can't use it for personal use because it's a company car?
No, you absolutely can use it for personal use. It's not, like I say, some company cars are meant to be entirely used for business purposes, but most people that have company cars, there's an element of personal use anyway.
Yep.
That's what attracts the benefit in kind. If in theory, if you actually had a company car and there was no personal use at all, I mean, you'd struggle to justify it because commuting home would be personal use. But if there was no personal use, you wouldn't have to pay benefit in kind.
Right, okay. And related to that as well, another weird one that comes up is it has to be a pool car. That means that your car has to be allowed to be used by all of the staff. Is that true?
No, entirely not. No, like I say, it's an employee benefit. To be honest, I reckon we get a good proportion of people which opt into salary sacrifice, and the actual person who's sacrificing the salary might not even be driving the car. They might be getting it for the partner to do the school run with the children, for example, because it's much cheaper than them going out and getting it personally.
Yep.
So it's an employee benefit. Basically, it's making an employee's salary go further. This has got nothing to do with using it. You can use it for business use, but in most cases, these vehicles are never used for business purposes.
Okay, well, you kind of got a little bit ahead of me there, I think. Is it just one car per employee, or can you get multiple cars? Say you earn quite a lot of money, I don't know, 100 grand.
Yeah.
You can afford more than one car. Can you get more than one?
Absolutely. So, I mean, as a rule of thumb, we cannot, and this isn't just our rule, you can't sacrifice below gross minimum wage.
Yep.
So as long as your deductions don't take you below gross minimum wage, you could do what you like. So if your wage allows you to get 2 vehicles, there's no reason why you couldn't.
Do some businesses, like the actual employer, sometimes put rules in place that you might only be allowed one?
Yeah, ultimately, like I say, when employees who aren't sort of used to this scheme launch the scheme, sometimes they want to just keep a bit of control over it and not let it spiral. So sometimes you just limit to one car, which we've had very commonly. And then once they've run the scheme for 6 months, it was like, well, this works really well. Let's open it out now. And then obviously we add numerous vehicles to it.
Okay, that makes sense. Can you get a salary sacrifice car without salary sacrifice being set up in your business?
No, so it's not a person couldn't do this. An employer has to agree to set it up. The salary sacrifice aspect of it is how it's put through payroll. It can only be done with PAYE, so in answer to a personal. You couldn't set up a personal contract to say I'm going to do it through salary sacrifice.
Okay, so it has to be set up in your business. We'll go through in a little jiffy how to persuade your boss if you need to, or how to set it up. We'll go through that in a little sec. Got a couple more questions on how it works. Is there any deposit that you have to pay? No,
so like you say, it's a fixed rolling contract, so you wouldn't actually have anything deducted from your wage usually until the vehicle's physically delivered, and then it's a recurring payment. But obviously, if you take a vehicle on 3 years, it's the same payment over 3 years.
And when you get the car, you have to choose the way you set it up, you have to choose a certain mileage and years, don't you? How does that work?
Absolutely. So when you get a vehicle, obviously, as you would when you go into a dealership personally and do a lease, they ask you how many annual miles you're doing per year. You pick your term of it, whether you want 2, 3, 4 years. I'm going to do 10,000 miles per year or 15,000 miles per year. You pick your contract parameters, and then the pricing which you get is based off the back of that. Because obviously, the higher the amount or less miles you do reflects the depreciation of the vehicle.
Okay, so what's like a typical one that people go for?
The most common contract is 3 years, 10,000 miles, tends to be the norm.
Okay, perfect. Well, that leads us nicely on to the next section, which is what can go wrong with salary sacrifice. There are a couple of things that can go wrong, and we want to avoid those, so that's what we're going to go over right now. The first one I've got, which is related to what we were just talking to, that the mileage. There's something called an excess mileage fee, isn't there? Can you just explain what that is?
Yeah, so obviously if you take a vehicle on 10,000 miles a year, over 3 years, the finance company would expect that car to go back on 30,000 miles. So anything over that mileage would attract an excess mileage fee. Now that excess mileage varies from car to car, but a usual one, it could have been anywhere between 10 pence or 15 pence per mile.
Okay.
So if that car goes over 1,000 miles and it was 15 pence a mile, you'd be paying 150 quid in excess mileage fee at the end.
Okay, and obviously we don't want to have a great big excess mileage fee at the end, do we? And it can easily run into a lot of money, can't it?
Absolutely. It doesn't take an employee long to realise sometimes if the lower mileage you pick, the less my contribution is going to be.
Okay, so if you say an employee gets a car and they choose, I don't know, 10,000 miles, but it turns out for whatever reason they've moved house or they have to come into the office more than they expected. It turns out they're driving 15,000 miles a year. Can they change their contract, like mid-contract?
So with ourselves, I'll say ourselves on this one, we do biannual mileage checks. So once you deliver the vehicle, 6 months in, you'd get a message from ourselves saying, can you update your mileage? And then you'd get one at the 12-month period. And after that point, we can usually get a good idea of how you were 6 months, 12 months, and how you're tracking for your mileage. If it's all fine, we don't need to get involved. If it's under, this goes both ways as well. If it's under or over, what we'll do is we'll contact you and say, you took your contracts on this. This is what you're actually doing. Do you envisage that you're going to continue to do this mileage, or is it just you might have just been travelling more this year, but I'm going to do less next year? If you say, no, this is my mileage, we can then look to rewrite the contract. Now, this works both ways. If you're over mileage, we'll rewrite it over, so your contribution goes slightly up per month, but you're not paying a massive early termination, an excess mileage charge at the end of the contract. But it also works the other way. If you've paid for mileage which you're not using, we can reduce your mileage to save you money.
Okay, so you say that's how vehicle consulting do it?
Yes.
Is that how all salary sacrifice providers do it?
Unfortunately not, no.
Okay, explain how some do it.
So some of them, it is the mileage you take at contract inception. So when you start the contract, is the mileage you agree to take, and whatever you send that vehicle back with, if you're over mileage, they're going to charge you for it.
As in a great big lump sum at the end?
Yeah, pretty much. Which then, there's difficulties with that in itself, because ultimately the contract is between the business and the finance company. So it's not the employee that they're going to build it. They're going to build a company, and then the company then has to recharge the employee for the cost of the excess mileage, which if it's in the thousands can start getting difficult.
Okay, and a great big lump sum mileage fee, that goes to the business as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, like you say, because it's only vehicles leased under the business, under the business name, it's sent to the business, and then it's left upon the business to go and recuperate them costs, which isn't ideal.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to cause some pretty angry employees, right?
Yeah, well, we're probably going to find in this that a lot of the problems that can arise with salary sacrifice isn't necessarily the product itself, it's the provider you choose to set up with.
Yep, okay. So to avoid this, a key question to ask is, can you amend the contract mileage mid-contract? And if not, is it just going to be a great big lump sum fee at the end?
Yeah.
And there's one particular provider, probably the one you've heard of, that does that lump sum one, isn't there? Okay, we've got a couple of questions. I know we haven't, sorry, my mistake. Let's move on to another thing that can go wrong and how to avoid it. So, something called accelerated payments. Again, this is something that one of the big salary sacrifice providers does. Explain to me what accelerated payments are.
Yes, so I've always found this one quite strange, but accelerated payments is essentially, I mean, to keep it simple with ourselves, if, say, the gross deduction, make it easy, was £500 a month.
As in the amount that they're paying each month?
Yeah, the amount that, say the gross deduction was £500 a month, and you did it for 3 years, and you took insurance, doesn't matter whether you had 3 claims, it's £500 a month and it stays that way for 3 years. There's no deviation in that, it's the same amount, so it's really easy from an admin. You put it into gross deduction, set it as a recurring payment, and it's simple for admin.
Is that how
That's how we do it. Now, accelerated payments is basically what they do is the gross deduction actually changes through different sort of cycles of the contract. So, for example, you might pay significantly more as a gross deduction in months 1 to 6, and then from months 7 till 12, it might slightly reduce, and then it might increase again. And I mean, the reason why we do this is still a bit unknown to me, but I think it's to do with the early termination protection. But essentially, this is going to cause a massive admin, a payroll problem, because you're going to have to update employees. So you're going to get 6 months into the contract, and then you're going to have to update their gross deductions again, and you're going to have to notify the employee, let them know what the deductions is, instead of one fixed payment throughout, which is really easy to manage for everyone.
Yeah, well, I've seen an example on this. One of our clients sent us through a quote given by one of our competitors, cheekily. The first month payment was absolutely massive, to the point where it could potentially leave that person struggling financially. And then every month for 36 months, the payment is different. So if you work in payroll, 3 years worth of payments on salary, for every single employee who gets a car through the scheme, that's going to be a nightmare.
Absolutely. From our point of view, and in terms of HR and payroll, we want to provide you with a payroll report. You implement it once for one driver, and then you just leave it, unless there's a mileage amendment or anything physically being amended to them. The deduction's exactly the same, so it's a minimal HR burden. Whereas this, like you say, if for 1 or 2 vehicles, it's not ideal, but it might be manageable. But if you're a scalable company, you've got 10, 15 employees, you'd be changing people's gross deductions every month, and it'd cause a massive admin burden, which ultimately is what we're trying to avoid as a company.
And as well, like, some of the employees aren't expecting that. Like, we had another person comment in one of our videos saying they didn't realise it was accelerated payments.
Well, the problem with that is they take an average, so you might be paying £800 in the first month, and then right by the end of the contract you're at £400, but then they advertise it as the payment is 566 because that's the average across all the payments, which is just, I mean, that doesn't sit right with me. It probably doesn't sit right with anyone, really. No. I'm not too sure why they do it, but it is out there.
Well, it's just a route to get, again, more angry employees who aren't expecting this.
Yeah,
which is what you want to avoid.
Salary sacrifice in itself can be a really simple process, but there's a lot of things that people are doing to make it really difficult at the same time.
Okay, so another key thing, if you're a business looking to set up salary sacrifice in your business, ask if they do accelerated payments or if the payments are going to be consistent every single month for the entire length of the contract. Okay, the last thing to look out for in terms of things that can go wrong is, it's employees just not understanding what they're getting in for, because there are a couple of things that some people don't expect. But if they understand that, it's all right. But if they don't, employees can get a bit annoyed about it, can't they?
Absolutely. Most employees don't look at gross deductions. Most employees look at the number, usually in the bottom right of the payslip, and that's what I'm taking home physically per month. And most employees just want to know, if I take salary sacrifice, I get paid £2,500. How much less of that am I going to have per month if I take this car? But the problem is, obviously, this is done as a gross deduction, obviously before income tax. So what you actually see as a gross deduction and what the net cost is could be significantly different in figures. So what we do is, like you say, we like to sort of do stuff like this, train and provide FAQs, educate your employees before they opt into the scheme, because the last thing we want is you launching a scheme, your employees opting into these vehicles, getting the pay slip in month 1 and going, what's this? I don't understand it. In which case we feel like we failed as a company, but it does happen with other suppliers, and like you say, we don't just launch it to a company, although in theory we could potentially launch a scheme in 2-3 days. It causes more problems than it solves.
Yeah, so would you say that educating the employees on how it works, things like that it can change your tax code?
Will change
your tax code. That scares people, doesn't it? And if they're not expecting it, again, more angry employees. So it's crucial to educate your employees this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, another thing, if you're looking for a salary sacrifice provider as a business, ask them how they're going to educate your employees. If they're saying, we're going to launch it in 2 days, I'd be worried, because you're potentially going to have a lot of angry employees on your hands because they weren't expecting things like the tax code changing.
From what I've seen, some of them is a simple document which you have on the site, but I don't think there's enough information there to warrant launching a scheme. I think it needs more in-depth conversations, things like this, or closed-off Q&As, which is what we do, or one-to-one calls. Some employees, like you say, need to understand it before they opt into this.
Yeah, okay. So if you are choosing a salary sacrifice provider, Ask if you can amend the contract in terms of mileage. Ask if they do accelerated payments, and if they do, I mean, do you want to do that? Probably not. How much education do they provide? The other thing is, how much admin support do they give to you? How does it work with vehicle consulting?
Well, like you say, ultimately we like to position ourselves between usually HR and your employees. If there's not a setup there, employees find the path of least resistance, and ultimately it can become a big admin burden on HR, asking questions. It could be employees asking, well, what's this, how does this work? We like to sit ourselves directly in between, so we answer the questions and sort of let the company do what they do best. You look after your stuff, and we'll assist your employees with this, which is why you've chose us to set you up as a supplier, hopefully. So in answer to your question, once again, and as we've alluded to, all these problems can be a lot of problems, but all these problems can be solved with who you choose to partner up with as a supplier. You need to check this out beforehand, because if they don't offer any back-end support, it's just leaving you to it. For large companies, it can spiral with HR.
Okay, now let's talk about how to actually set it up in your business. So, I mean, a lot of people watching this might not have a salary sacrifice scheme. So what's the first step if they actually want to get started and get a salary sacrifice scheme set up? If we're talking to one of an MD or a head of HR or something like that?
The first thing would be to get in contact with us. Obviously, there's numerous ways you can do that. You can drop me a message on LinkedIn. I think there's a place. Obviously, you book a call with myself in the top left corner, top right, could be either one. But like I say, get in touch with us first, because what I like to do is I like to have sort of a quick 15-20 minute chat. Understand, some people know what salary sacrifice is. Yeah, we've done it before. It's not worked out for us with this employer for whatever reason. We know what we're doing. Really straightforward. Other people don't really know about it and need explanation. So what I like to do is establish where you are in the process, why you're looking to implement salary sacrifice. Are you looking to do it just as an employee perk? Are you looking to reduce your CO2 output? Understand why you need it, and from there we can build upon that. Usually from there we get the key people who tend to be involved in it. Now, like you say, it tends to CEOs see the benefit of it, and from videos like this, and tend to pass it on. Then we tend to get HR, payroll, environmental tends to be a big part, finance directors. They all come in, and ultimately they've all got questions for different reasons. HR will have different questions in relation to their job, as in finance and payroll might have different questions in regards to that. We answer all the questions there, and then obviously we build a project team and go forward, how we're going to implement the scheme. And like I say, once we've established what your company want and how to build the scheme, we build tailored FAQs, we do closed-off webinars with your company. Sometimes we turn up with electric vehicles, give them an idea of what different cars we offer, and then we go from there and build upon from there.
Okay, so step one, book a call, which you can do by scanning this QR code.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes without saying that to offer a salary sacrifice scheme, the company has to be financially viable. Obviously, it's a contract between ultimately the finance company and the employer. So if you've got any queries or you've got any questions about it, get in touch first, and then we can actually have a genuine conversation about whether it's something we can offer for you as well. Hopefully we can.
Okay, quick question just on a kind of side note. Is there a minimum salary or earnings that you need to earn to get a salary sacrifice car?
So it's a great question, and in answer to it, I wish I could give you a definitive answer, because that'd be a lot easier. But the answer is there's not a definitive answer. We can't let you sacrifice below gross minimum wage. Now, I'm not sure what it is in a minute, but I know it's going up in
11.44, I think.
So it's going up in a week's time. So I think it ends up about 25.5 in a week's time.
Okay.
Give or take is what it is.
Like that.
But we can't sacrifice below gross minimum wage. Now, if you're on our portal, it calculates it and it won't let you pick a vehicle which takes you below minimum wage off the information which you've inputted to generate the scheme. If we do a consultation, obviously one of us will let you know manually. But in answer to your question, there's not a definitive answer. Usually speaking, 28, 30 grand is probably the starting point, but like you say, it varies, because we go off what current markets are. We do special offers, so just because a vehicle doesn't fit this month into your gross deduction, we might do a batch offer on a certain amount of vehicles, which then does fit into your salary sacrifice offering for the next month. But I'd say if you're on 30 grand, that would give you a good amount of vehicles to look into, but there's not a physical minimum payment.
Okay, but you've got to make sure it's your gross earnings after you've paid for the car is still
above minimum wage.
Gotcha. Okay, just getting back to how to set it up in the business. So we've talked about how an employer might want to set it up. If there's an employee watching this who needs to convince their boss, which we get a lot of, what are the key things that you would say in terms of what should they say to the boss, and how do they convince the boss?
Well, like you say, I mean, I think we've actually built an FAQ based on this and how to do it, but ultimately it's a benefit, and you've got to display it that it's a benefit that it massively benefits the employee, massively benefits the employer.
Yeah. I think, shall I go through what I've got
Yeah.
for you? Okay, number one, it doesn't cost the business anything.
With ourselves,
Okay.
that's probably a key one.
Okay, what, does it cost
Obviously, some people charge for set-up of systems, some people charge payments per ounce, like I say.
As in some salary sacrifice providers?
Exactly, like I say. I mean, I've seen some salary sacrifice providers that use the NI savings as they retain the NI savings.
Okay, sorry, excuse me.
No, it's okay.
We've just got one more question through. Hi, I'm due to renew my BIK car. I can't charge at home. Would plug-in hybrid BMW X5 be beneficial? Or would salary sacrifice be better than BIK? So it looks like they have a company car and just pay BIK.
Yeah, so salary sacrifice still attracts BIK. In regards to a company car, I'd need to understand what your car allowance was, what you were being offered to be able to help you. If you drop us a message, I myself can have a look at your current situation and let you know whether it would be beneficial or not. I mean, it goes without saying, I specialise in salary sacrifice here. Vehicle consulting as a business, do business contract hire. So if it works out better through business contract hire, we can also offer you a solution that way. Like you say, we want to offer we are like I say, fully fledged fleet solution. If you're looking at business contract hire, we'll advise what's better for you in your circumstances.
Okay, right. Just getting back to how to convince the boss to get salary sacrifice. So, first thing, it doesn't cost the business anything if you do it through us.
No.
It does with some other salary sacrifice providers. Second thing I would point out, and this is what tends to usually really get them to want to get the salary sacrifice scheme, is show them what car they can get.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what they care about, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason, like you say, I mean, salary sacrifice works for everything. We try to do some of our promotional stuff on I'd say, more normal cars. But ultimately, when you put up the savings and the people that drive people in the CEOs, it's when you put a Porsche Taycan up against like a BMW 5 Series, which two cars which are completely different P11D values, completely different cars in their own right. I think one's about 40 grand more expensive. But when you actually do these figures in, it's like, well, how's this one cheaper than the 5 Series? That's usually what drags people in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of our colleagues, Daniel, they're a director of a business, got a Porsche Taycan through salary sacrifice. Porsche Taycan's always the one, isn't it?
Yeah.
But because he was driving a petrol car previously, but in total, it saved him £1,000 a month.
It's mental. And I think what people don't realise is, obviously, people see business contracts, hire leases, and yeah, they might be leases on BMW 5 Series diesels for £350 a month, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that attracts benefit in kind, and benefit in kind's like 35% on some of these vehicles. So if you're a 45% taxpayer and you've got a car that's got a 35% benefit in kind payment, your payments could be like £600-700 a month in tax. So yeah, the vehicle's cheap to lease, but what you're paying in benefit in kind tax massively offsets what you're saving, and that's where this all sort of bundles into one and shows the savings.
Exactly. So, okay, so tell the boss they can get a Porsche Taycan, Land Rover Sport, Range Rover Sport, plug-in hybrid, Porsche Macan.
Yeah, I mean, the new ones, like you say, it benefits everything. Like you say, we get all the higher ones, BMW i5, Porsche Taycan, all the expensive ones.
Yeah. Lotus Electra.
Yeah, like I say, anyone that's in a 45% taxpayer, Lotus Electra, anyone that's a 45% taxpayer, when you're switching someone from someone that's paying a benefit in kind of 30% on these vehicles as a 45% taxpayer to now it's 2%, the savings can be. It's almost like this isn't real. It's like a promotional thing, but that is the real.
Yeah, so that's the way that you focus the boss. So just maybe put some like Porsche brochures on their desk or something like that. And the other thing that they will worry about is how much is it? Well, we've said it doesn't cost anything, but the worry is what happens if an employee leaves. Basically, just say to them there's something called early termination protection. There are some T's and C's to it, but generally speaking, that early termination fee is covered.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So that's how you persuade your boss. If you want a PDF guide, we've got a PDF guide which talks them through all of that. You can send that on to them. Just comment PDF if you want that, and I'll send it over later on. Okay. Couple of questions for you, Mike. We had someone comment saying if someone has 40 to 50 grand, what kind of cars are on the market that are quite good to go for right now?
Well,
off the top of your head.
There's quite a lot. I mean, Tesla's always in and around there. Now, people think Teslas are these dead expensive vehicles. They always seem to work. We get by far and away the most ordered vehicle in the salary sacrifice. But there's vehicles such as Hyundai Ioniq 5. I'm thinking of vehicles that I've done today, actually. Lexus RZ, strange vehicles which you never would have thought have got loads of discounts to them. Most Mercedes brands have large discounts at the minute through salary sacrifice. But even the other stuff, if you want just a smaller vehicle like a Hyundai Kona now, which has got a range of 300 plus mile range, and it's working out really cheap. So the people that fall into 40/50, we find people, it goes two ways. People can have cars which they didn't think would be able to get sort of aspirational cars, and now they can get them.
Yep.
Or they think, I just want this to save as much money as possible, and they get in vehicles exceptionally cheap with high ranges now.
If you were on 40, 50 grand, could you get a BMW? Could you afford it, do you think?
Yes.
What kind of models are we talking?
I think depending on the mileage you could get quite a lot of models. BMW i5, i4. There's models in BMW which you've obviously got the iX1s, iX2s. There's quite a lot of vehicles which would probably fit in your bracket now.
Okay, if you were earning, I don't know, 60 grand plus, what kind of cars are we talking?
I mean, then you start getting into the realms of the bigger vehicles. So you've got like your obviously high-end Teslas. You've got your large BMWs, your iX3s, your iXs, Mercedes. You can go even like say your EQEs, Audis, Q8s, Q4 e-tron. There's loads of vehicles. Like you say, we find there's
any hybrids you go for?
I mean, when you get to the higher end, obviously the main hybrid which most directors tend to opt into is the Range Rover Sport plug-in hybrid, because the main reason why it's got a 5% benefit in kind, which is ridiculous, to be honest. But it's got a 5% benefit in kind, so that works out really well as a plug-in hybrid. There's only, I think, one other car on the market which has got a 5% benefit in kind, which is a Mercedes GLC plug-in hybrid, which is a lot smaller car. So you're getting a 100 plus grand car with a low benefit in kind, and when you stack them figures up, even as a 45% taxpayer, it's still making massive sense to do it through salary sacrifice.
With the plug-in hybrids, do you have to plug them in to get that tax break?
No, you don't. I should know that because I didn't do that either when I had one. Like you say, and this is the reason why they've sort of switched it. But go back 4 or 5 years ago, plug-in hybrid vehicles used to have really low benefit in kinds. I think they were about 2% 5 or 6 years ago.
Yep.
And then obviously everyone started ordering plug-in hybrids, like I say, sort of a middle switch over, and then they started increasing the BIK range for plug-in hybrids, and now they've shoved electrics at 2%. Obviously because they realised that people were driving these plug-in hybrids but not actually using the electric aspects of them. Majority were leased through businesses, and basically it's the same thing with electrics now, and they've just switched the benefit in kind cheaper to there.
Okay, perfect. Right, well, I'll leave it there. If you have any questions, do send... Oh, in fact, we've got one more. One last one. What's the point of consulting on cars when your answer is always going on about EVs? Why do we always go on about EVs?
Well, mainly because it's the cheapest aspect through routes. Obviously, like I say, I'm a salary sacrifice, which is I implement it into businesses. And what's the most viable vehicles through businesses at the minute? It's electric vehicles.
It's because it's cheapest.
Well, the realisation is that the government doesn't need more businesses ordering electric vehicles. They're doing that by their own right anyway, because the benefit in kind is just so astronomical that it makes so much sense, and they can't run petrol and diesel through businesses. What they're struggling with is getting personal individuals to order electric vehicles, because when you go into dealerships, I appreciate an electric car would be 30 grand, but the petrol diesel version is 20 grand. And as a personal individual, you're going to buy the cheaper one. You might be better off when you add up the costs over 15 years if you own the vehicle, but that's the few and far between of drivers that do that. So the government have done this and made the benefit in kind so low, because what they're doing is they're getting people, well, normal through salary sacrifice, it tends to be normal employees using their salary to then now they're getting electric vehicles, so they're getting more electric vehicle supply into the general market.
So it's not necessarily that you or I love electric cars.
I mean, I do love electric vehicles, but that's besides the point.
Well, we'll ignore that part. But if the benefit in kind was low on petrols, then we recommend them. But it's not.
We would recommend them, but like you say, ultimately, it's the way it's going. It's happening, whether you like it or not. It's happening. So what I would say is, before you push, because obviously I know it's been pushed back to 2025, but eventually they're going to phase it out with all these high congestion charge zones, ULEV zones. Eventually you're going to be forced into electric, so you may as well progressively move across to it, which is what they've been doing with plug-in hybrids and now moving across to electrics. And what I would say is, obviously on the internet you see the few and far between horror stories of electric vehicles. The people that I've dealt with, I reckon at least 95, probably higher percentage, that once they've had an electric vehicle, they reorder an electric vehicle and they say, oh, this is great. I think people stigmatise electric vehicles either because one, they're one of the very few that have a really bad experience with it, or two, you just read the news and you've never actually driven one.
Also, people worry about the battery degrading or something terrible happening to the battery. But if you're leasing it, it's in warranty, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, the battery degradation you don't have to worry about because it's certainly not going to degrade that much in 2 or 3 years. And it's then again, it's not your problem, which isn't. It's not necessarily the right answer, but it is the answer. It's not you that has to worry about that.
Yeah.
And that's the way you've got to look at it. Like you say, people look at it as like, well, what am I going to do with this vehicle? No one's going to buy it. The reality is it's not your problem. It's the finance company's problem, and they've made their figures in accordance with what they think.
Okay, right. I think that is all the questions. We've got a cheers, gents, from Chris. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, whether it was on TikTok or YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook. If you have any questions, drop us a direct message. If you want to book a call with Mike, you can do it by scanning this QR code here. We will leave you to enjoy your Easter weekend. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a good afternoon. Thank you, Mike.
Brilliant. Thank you.